To be here.
Thank you. So please, for the benefit of our listeners,
hmm
introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Mary Powers. I live here in Memphis, Tennessee. I've lived here for a long time, like 30 years. I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, and went to school there, went to my elementary school and high school, and then I went on to Indiana University down in Bloomington, Indiana, where I majored in journalism and third world studies. And then after that, I've traveled extensively. I worked for the Associated Press as a reporter. I
Nice.
worked for the Arizona Daily Star in Tucson for several years as a reporter. And then I ended up in Memphis to work for the Commercial Appeal newspaper as a reporter. So that's what brought me to Memphis. I've stayed in Memphis. I eventually left journalism and went to work at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital as their senior science writer. My husband Tom is from Mississippi, and he's clearly born and raised in the South. And I have two stepdaughters and two other daughters, and so we've stayed in the South in part because our children are here.
Okay, so for me, this is amazing to interview a person who has been in journalism and
Yeah,
who has,
yeah.
uh, this is good.
Uh-huh.
And I know you because you are associated with some things that I like and admire. So before we get into that, tell us some things that you have done. You have given a whole list of things in a second, a minute, but the things that you have done after coming over here that actually led to what you are doing right now. And I know you're wearing this t-shirt. I have one too, but what are the things that you did and what are the things that made you get into what you currently are
Okay.
doing?
Okay, well, I'll just go on and explain.
Yeah,
I'm
please
I'm
do.
sure I'm the Memphis group lead, which it means I lead sort of the Memphis group of the national organization Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America.
Mm-hmm.
And the mom's lingo is, rather than calling somebody the president or the chair or something, you're the lead of a group, and
Mm-hmm.
other people have other
Right.
roles, and
Mm-hmm.
they're also leads. And so, as a journalist, I wrote mostly about health and medicine. So I wrote a lot about, especially once I was here in Memphis, I wrote a lot about gun violence as a public health issue. And at some point, I did go on and get a master's in public health from the University of Memphis
Mm-hmm. Now, when you said you wrote, whom did you write that
for the
for?
commercial
For the
appeal.
commercial appeal.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Most of my work is done for the specific either publications or the newswire service, the Associated Press that I mentioned. I've done some freelance work, but mostly it's been for the two newspapers I mentioned. And so I wrote about gun violence. I spent time in the trauma center at Regional One,
Hmm.
just writing about that, talking to the people in the aftermath of gun violence. And then in my own life, my now sister-in-law, who's a close friend in high school, but she's not my sister-in-law, her parents were shot and killed in their home in Mishawaka, Indiana, and her
Hmm.
older brother was shot in the same incident and survived. And I know how devastating that has been for her family, for her, and by sort of even for us as,
Association through
yeah,
association.
yeah,
Yeah.
even
And yeah.
for us as a result of that. At the Commercial Appeal, a colleague, Rosemary Pleasure, who worked with us in the newsroom, went home at lunch one day here in Memphis, and her former romantic partner ambushed her and shot and killed her on her lunch hour with a gun. She had tried to break up with him, and so again, it was just she was just living her life. Went home for lunch, normal, nice spring weekday, and died and was killed. And then as a journalist, you don't really get you write about things, but you don't get actively involved in politics or even in nonprofit
So the
movements.
idea, of course, when you're writing about something, is to present the information
Right,
as
right,
it is without
right,
taking any sides.
right, right,
And
right.
many times you have to keep yourself aloof
Right,
as
right.
as a presenter of the news, so to say. And in that process, then you realize that you are not doing justice to the issues at hand.
Or I see, I would disagree with you on that. I do
Okay.
think you are doing justice in a particular way. You are presenting the
Well, yeah, yeah,
reality,
right, right.
right? But you're not, and you can talk to different people about
Mm-hmm.
possible solutions, but you don't personally start to actively support or advance a particular solution that you as an individual feels is the best solution. So in that case, like in terms of gun violence, I then didn't on my either my working or my off hours start spending a lot of time advocating for a particular solution to this larger problem of gun violence. So in that way, you're correct. But I like to feel that if you're writing about it, you are really,
Of course, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
True,
yeah.
true, very true. So now going into being involved with making sense of gun violence and moms demand action. Tell me, how did you get acquainted and then involved
With
in
this
it? Yeah.
particular organization. Yeah, in 2016, which by then I had left journalism and I was working for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And so I had greater leeway in terms of how I sort of what activities I got involved in. And my stepdaughter, who was 29 years old at the time, lived here in Memphis, was about to finish her undergraduate degree, had two lovely children that she loved a lot, had a
Mm,
long term partner. She was in a she was struggling with serious depression, but she was getting treatment, she was getting counseling. She was assuring us she was doing well. And then, in a period of particular darkness, shortly after a childhood friend of hers died by suicide, she was able to go into a pawn shop on Summer Avenue and buy a gun, and which she used to shoot and kill herself in her backyard several hours later. And so, in the aftermath of that, trying to sort of find our way forward, not only me, but my husband and our family, my stepdaughter, Hannah's older sister, actually is the one who brought me to moms. And I'm not even sure how she connected with them. I think through a friend of a friend. And we went out and met with some people from moms and sort of told our story. And they told us, they answered our questions about the organization and what they were doing. And really, it was out of that, our own personal tragedy,
mm,
which the more we learned about her situation at the time, the more I think my husband and I both believe that if there had been some way for her to, at that moment, not be able to access a gun, she'd still be alive today because she was, suicide is an impulsive act. And if you have a weapon, it's a particularly lethal act. It's very few people who try and die by suicide, if they've got a gun, survive. But most people who attempt suicide never try it again and go on to live a long and happy life, happy as anybody's life is,
mm-hmm.
right? Everybody's life
Yeah.
is like a little, has their ups and downs. So it was really in the aftermath of that, in an
And that
effort.
was in 2016.
2016, yeah, yep, in November of 2016. And it was just, it was such a tragedy for us, and us being everybody who knew and loved
Mm-hmm.
her, not
Yeah,
just her
yeah.
family, but her children and her close
And
friends.
how old were her children?
Her children were at the time, I'm thinking maybe 4, and one of them's about to turn 19. She died in 2016. I'm always good. Once kids get to be a certain age, just like, I don't know,
Yeah.
are they 9? I think she was 9 or 10. She
Okay.
was, so,
So that must have been so devastating
yes,
for the
yes,
children
yep, yep,
as well as the
yep,
family.
yep, yep.
And you cannot fathom the pain that children go through,
No, no.
whether it's an accident or something else. If it is a medical thing where you know that somebody is going to pass, then that's different.
It's hard, but yeah,
But
yeah,
this is even more
right,
tragic.
right. Right.
So I can only imagine what they must have gone through, and you as family members went through all that pain. So, and you having been introduced to moms, when we say moms, we
Right.
mean moms
Yeah.
demand action.
Hmm.
So, you first volunteered for them, became a part of that organization.
Right,
Okay.
right, and got to know the different because as you know, Moms Demand Action is just not moms anymore. It's mothers and others, men, women. My husband
Hmm.
was still working as a journalist, and so he was very, very supportive. Thinks it's a great organization, but was not as actively involved just because of his work at the time. Um, and Moms Demand Action is great in part because they take such a comprehensive approach to the problem, and so you can Moms Demand Action focuses on survivors of gun violence and trying to support them. They focus on legislation that is designed to improve gun safety and public safety around issues related to access to guns,
Mm.
gun storage. They work with raising public awareness. They work on gun suicide, not gun suicide with vets, gun suicide with just people at risk for the problem,
Hmm.
reducing gun suicide. And so, one great thing about moms is really if if you have any time, if you have a little bit of time, we've got something for you to do. If you have a more time and feel more drawn to a particular commitment or a
Hmm.
particular aspect of gun violence, there's a place for you in moms. Um, and so, and ultimately, then we meet weekly. We meet no, we don't meet weekly. We meet monthly, and I was involved in supporting and helping out with a number of initiatives locally and in the state. And then during the pandemic, when everything sort of shut down and we had to work virtually, and
Mm.
that's when I really became more involved in a leadership role, just to help us get through the pandemic and switch from in person to online, and then as we came out of the pandemic, I just stayed in that lead position for now. I think usually moms really encourages turnover in different leadership positions
Hmm.
every 2 years. So I'll probably roll off here at the end of 2024 and do something else with moms. But they just really like to support and encourage other people to assume leadership positions to really build a comprehensive movement as
Mm.
opposed to for people. And if they happen to be hit by, you know what I mean, if there's only a couple of people that are doing the bulk of the work, it's not going to be sustainable. So, and now we are Moms Demand Action is the largest volunteer organization in the country working to reduce gun violence. We have chapters across Tennessee, not only in larger communities, but in smaller ones as well.
Hmm.
Murfreesboro, um, um, I'm going to think of it. I'm going to blank on some of the smaller ones, but also Chattanooga, Knoxville,
Hmm.
Nashville, and Memphis, and also in smaller communities.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned quite a few names that now it is called this every town again,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So how many organizations fall under that umbrella?
Sure. So Moms Demand Action was actually started independently by a
Hmm.
woman in her kitchen in Indianapolis, a woman named Shannon Watts. And she started it the day after the Sandy Hook school shooting, in which
Mm.
26 people were killed, 20 of them first graders in Connecticut at the Sandy Hook Elementary School. I think at the time she was a stay at home mom, and I think she was just thinking, this is not normal. This is how can it was like you cast about looking for something to do, some way to respond, and so she started a Facebook group called Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America that has now grown to this organization. It has 10 million supporters nationwide.
10 million?
10 million, yep, 10 million.
Wow.
Yes,
Mm.
yep. And
No, how do you define supporters?
There are people, as you know, it's easy to sign up for moms. You don't you don't have to pay dues. You just sign up, and so that's why we say supporters as opposed to members, just to make sure. I don't know. It seems like membership is so informal, and this is just me talking as opposed to the organization
Right, right,
talking.
right.
But my understanding always was that they're supporters in the sense that they've signed up
Okay.
to be part of moms.
And for a city like Memphis,
Yeah.
how many supporters do you have?
Well, we have about 200 active members, and
Okay.
that means people that show up at things, that respond to emails, texts, and phone calls. That will, if we say, please call the governor on this, or call your state representative, or call your congressman, they will act. A lot, and I don't know the number of people who are officially on the rolls as supporters, but it's really about 200 that we consider really active volunteers in the group.
And the core people who are there, who actually do something more than just come and attend events,
Right.
they would be like 15, 20?
Oh, no, I think that's more than that. I mean,
Okay.
because I think people that like that go up to Nashville, like once a year we go to Nashville and meet with our state legislators, and talk to whoever we can about gun legislation here in Tennessee. Like this year, Memphis sent about 100 people up to Nashville. And so that involves getting off work or like spending the day, right? Going to Nashville and coming back. And so I think you get to be an active supporter if you've gone to that trouble. And then in terms of more, we do a number of activities throughout the year. Like we staff informational tables at community groups and outreach. We'll be at Pride this year. We do a candlelight ceremony every year to mark, to remember people and lives changed and lost through gun violence every year. We usually do an event called Wear Orange in June, which is just raises awareness about gun violence and the
Why
prevalence.
orange?
Because it's named for a teenager in Chicago who performed at I think it was the second Obama inauguration. She was up there and she marched with a band from Chicago in the parade. And 2 weeks later, she was shot and killed walking home from school. As sort of just a random secondary, she wasn't, as far as police have ever said, she wasn't targeted. She just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And that happens a whole lot.
Yes, sadly it does. Sadly it does. And her favorite color was orange. And the first year for her birthday, her friends and family in Chicago organized like a memorial or a celebration or remembrance of her. And I can picture this young woman's face. And I'm going to mispronounce her name if I try and pronounce it, so I won't pronounce it. And since then, that has grown to this national event. And orange is, orange is the color hunters wear in the woods to sort of for safety reasons, so they stand out. They are not inadvertently shot by other hunters or other people. And so it's to remember her and remember her life and sort of make sure that she's not forgotten and that this message about gun violence is perpetrated. Oftentimes communities around the country, including here in Memphis, will take that day and do something that's designed to rebuild communities or take some action to reduce gun violence in our community. In Memphis, the most recently, we partners with Carpenter Art Garden, which is in the Binghamton neighborhood, to support the work they do with young children.
And we just covered that as well.
And we just in a high crime, high gun violence area. They're doing great work around art and gardening, things like that.
So 2 questions. Why are we here in this scenario? in the US with guns. And I know what other countries and also so-called advanced countries that are really advanced. Um, that say we don't need so many guns. And here we have people say, oh, yeah, that's my birthright and I have to have it. And how dare you take it away from me? And considering that, okay, well, yeah, if they want to have guns, that's fine. But why do you think have we come to this situation
Right,
in the US?
right. Well, let me just clarify. Mom's demand action is not, we're not about taking away.
Correct, correct, correct,
Right, right,
correct,
right.
right.
If you want
It
to,
is about sense, making
right,
sense
right,
of.
right, right. We do, like, if you want to hunt, nobody's coming for your hunting weapon. If you want a gun in your home to protect yourself, we're not coming for that. I
Mhm,
mean, um, what we do believe is that with rights come
mhm,
responsibilities, and that if you are a gun owner, you do have a responsibility to
mhm,
securely store your weapon, to know how to use your weapon, and that the government has some role in, just like you have to have. The expectation is that when you drive a car, you know how to drive a car. You've had some experience with driving a car. Somebody's taught you how to drive a
mhm,
car. You've proven that you know the rules for driving a car, that your eyesight is appropriate, that you could see if you're driving a car.
mhm,
And so we believe, and I believe personally, that that even with the Second Amendment, which I think is open to great interpretation, which
mhm,
we've seen in this country and which we've seen in the court system and in the states, um, I think reasonable people can agree that if you have a gun, you need to know it's not unreasonable that there's a certain level of
mhm,
expectation and responsibility placed on you, um, because you're right. This level of gun violence in the United States is not normal. It's not inevitable, um, and I grew up, we didn't have guns in the home, in part because I think my parents were rightly concerned that I'm only laughing because the guns would have just been like used to shoot out the TV or something. I mean, we just didn't have guns in the home. They didn't think it was a good idea.
mm,
They didn't grow up with guns in their home. I did shoot like 22 rifles at summer camp. I was never a big hunter, but I know people who have guns. We don't have a gun in the home, again, because um, my experience as a health writer and the research I know of and have written about just shows that having a gun in the home really does increase the risk of gun suicide, and essentially having the gun used in a way that the owner does not intend it to be used. In the case of my stepdaughter, there was no gun in the home, and she was able to go in, buy a gun with like a short background check. And and then she was able to walk out and use it to kill herself, obviously a few hours later. So in Tennessee right now, there's very, very, very few rules around gun ownership. You can buy a gun in Tennessee if you're 21, or you can buy a handgun if you're 21. You don't have to. You can buy it in some cases without passing a background check. You can buy it online without passing a background check. You can go to any unlicensed gun dealer can
mhm,
sell you a gun. And a licensed gun dealer, what that is pretty loosey goosey in terms of what constitutes a licensed gun dealer. So the United States, at least, is been flooded with guns. I think gun sales went up dramatically during COVID, and as you know, in Memphis and in Tennessee, because of a change in state law that allows people to keep their handguns in their car
mhm,
or their boat when they're not occupied, when the car is empty, like there's nobody in the car, and there's no requirement that you secure your gun when it's in the car, or even hide the gun when it's in the car. And so there's been a huge jump in thefts from autos, gun thefts from
Mm-hmm.
automobiles, or
Yeah.
even gun break-ins from people looking for guns in automobiles. And one thing Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America has been working real hard on in Tennessee is to change the law and amend it so at least you're required to secure your guns safely, secure your gun in the car, in the vehicle, when you're not in the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
If you leave the vehicle unoccupied, the gun should be securely stored. And then if your gun is stolen, you should report it to the
Immediately.
police,
Yeah.
right? And that again is not required currently in the current state in Tennessee. So that's just a very small example, although it's a big one. I mean, the police did not support, and the sheriff's office did not support this change in the law that allowed people to keep their guns unsecured in automobiles that were empty. So
Mm.
we're not talking about driving when you're in the car. This law would have would not obtain to you. Yeah, pertain to you. It's when the car is empty that
Empty.
it would. Yeah.
So until recently, if you went to get some
Yeah.
groceries or get some shirt, trousers, pants, t-shirt, you could also buy guns in Walmart.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Can you still buy
No,
guns?
no, not
Okay, you
anymore.
can
Not
not
anymore
anymore.
because
Okay.
of some school shootings. I think they
Okay.
decided
Good.
that, oh, you know what? I think we need to step up, be responsible, and not sell guns. But that is what uh, the country has been.
Right.
And it's like, oh, you can buy a pistol for $25.
Right.
Now that's legally being sold in a legal way in a legal store
Right.
and as big as Walmart. But apart from that, on the street, you can just get it from somebody else. And that is very unfortunate. And that does not necessarily happen in other countries, and no matter how developed they are. And for me, as an immigrant, that comes as a total shock.
Right.
And
Right.
I know that moms is not getting into the politics of that part of that. But me as an individual, I find that shocking.
Right. No, believe me, I find it
Yeah.
shocking too. Yeah. Yeah. I think most people find it
Yeah.
shocking. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, there are drive-by shootings, accidental deaths,
Right.
small kids playing with guns, and
Finding
so
guns.
right
Yeah.
in within the house. And there are parents who do simple mistakes. Of course, to err is human. Of course, there have been so many instances, just minor things where um, a mom leaves the child in the back seat even though it's 80, 90 degrees outside and a child dies.
Right.
Similarly, this goes to a more responsibility. If it's a gun, then gun definitely kill. So it does make sense for you to take care of that, hide it, and secure it in a very safe, a vault or a
Right.
place where it doesn't. So, and that is what there is a demarcation of, oh, we do not do this. But moms say that, okay, we are only asking the legislators and all elected officials to understand that.
Right. Right. And I don't, because as you know, within the last couple of weeks in Nashville, a woman had a gun in her purse. She was looking for her keys. The gun was unsecured in her purse. The gun went off as she was looking for her keys, and she shot and killed her 13-year-old daughter. And so, again, what a tragedy for that family,
Yeah,
for the mother. We have a number of children. Gun death are now the leading cause of death for children 18 and younger in the United States. And again, that is a preventable problem. Like certain things, cancer is difficult. You can't prevent cancer and pediatric cancer, but this is something you can prevent. And I don't fully understand why people object to reasonable gun gun measures where it's like they set parameters, and I don't know what the problem is. I think my understanding is that sometimes people worry that that's just the first of many steps to come, and that somebody ultimately is coming for their weapons, although so far no one's come for their weapons. I know they're ready for it, but it's not happening. I haven't seen it happen. There's no plan for it to happen as far as I know.
Okay.
So,
So again, my perception has
right,
been that the people who object are the ones who, like you said, they think that they are coming for their guns,
right,
and they say, "Oh, you are not taking my gun away."
right, right, right,
And because of that one single presumption, they say, "Oh, I'm not going to allow these things to pass."
right, right,
Whether it's, I
right,
don't know, cities and counties,
right.
and at the state level and at the federal level as well. And that is why we have these issues. But the idea of having you on our show is to give out information to everybody that we are not taking your guns away, we are not putting restrictions on you, but there are some things that just are commonsensical that need to be implemented for the benefit of our people, so that kids, human, any life should not be lost in the first place,
No, no,
right?
correct. Yeah, yeah.
So what would you like people to know are the things? First, I want, for that's the first
Right.
question, is that what would you like people to know are the things that you are implementing for the benefit of everybody involved?
Right, right. Well, one thing we're working very, very hard nationally and here in Tennessee is to win support for a universal background check. And currently, it's possible, as I said, to buy guns without going through a background check. And a background check generally means that you're not a felon, that you haven't been convicted of certain crimes, or that you haven't been in the court system, been adjudicated that you can't own a gun. So it's a really limited number of things that would keep you from buying a gun. But currently, because as currently it is possible to buy a gun without going through a background check, and so we think
So
that
what if a record is expunged?
um,
Do the sellers have access to
yeah,
records
yeah, because
even
there's
if
a
it is
whole yeah,
expunged?
yeah, there's like if you yeah, there is a whole system that
Okay.
you can plug into that if you're a licensed gun dealer, you're going through that system. So we're talking about people who are not using that system. They're buying their weapons online or they're buying them like on the street corner, like you said. And nobody thinks that this is a panacea, that this is going to stop all gun sales to people
Hmm.
who aren't legally allowed to have them, but it would definitely reduce gun sales to people who shouldn't have them and make it much harder for those people to have access to weapons. So again, this isn't going to reduce any, but if you are legally allowed to to purchase a gun, this kind of a measure would have no impact on you whatsoever. It would, if you're buying a gun at a gun dealer right now, it would make no difference. So there's that. Um, in Tennessee, more than 20 states have adopted something called their extreme risk protection orders,
Hmm.
um, and they're the kind of bill that like Indiana has them, Florida has them. In other words, states across the political
Hmm.
spectrum have these kind of bills. And they're the kind of bills that if somebody is a risk to themselves or others, like the person who shot at Covenant School might have been, if
Hmm.
Tennessee had had this kind of a law, we might have been
In
able to
place, yeah.
stop that shooting because the shooter's family knew that that person was in crisis. But in Tennessee, there was no way proactively to limit that person's access to weapons. And
Mm.
so, again, these kind of, or the school shooter down in Parkland, Florida, who shot and killed a lot of children or young people at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Again, that person was known to police, was known to their family. The family had contacted law enforcement multiple times about their concerns, and that person was able to have access to a firearm, and I think a high capacity firearm, and change lives forever as a result. So these are the kind of measures, and these kind of bills require they're structured slightly differently, and they require the family or police to go to court and prove that the person is currently a risk. It gives a person, they can have legal representation while they're there, and it gives them a clear path forward to get their weapons back if they're judged to be a risk at the time. So again, it protects their rights, but it also protects the community's rights to be safe from, and helps keep the person safe at that time of crisis. So again, it's been implemented in more than 20 states, and in some states like Indiana, there has been a reduction in suicide, including gun suicide, but not just gun suicide, all suicide. So those are just two examples of bills. And we also are really interested in a cultural shift where people recognize that if you have a gun, you have a responsibility to secure that gun. We work with veterans, we work with law enforcement. You know, if you want to hunt, you go hunt, go hunt that deer. This is about all of us coming together just to make all of our communities safer, make our children safer, and just make our lives in this country better for everybody. And just, I think one thing we're really interested in is not letting people fall into this mindset that this is normal or that this is inevitable, because it's not. It's not. This just isn't. Because I grew up in the United States, and it wasn't like this when I was growing up. There was not this level of gun violence in the United States, and we just shouldn't allow it to go on as if this is normal. So.
Right.
And if people are interested, Memphis, there's chapters in Memphis, there's chapters across the country, and you can just text 644. No, you can text the word READY, READY, to 64433, and that'll get you connected with Moms Demand Action nationally, and that they'll put you in touch with the closest local chapter based on your zip code. Yeah, and then you can just plug yourself in. We do lots of social media, so if you like social media, you can help us out there. We're always looking for new partnerships with community groups. We work extensively with community groups here in Memphis, because this is a huge, complex problem. Nobody's going to solve it on their own, and we just would like to be part of it.
Right.
Part of the solution, not the problem.
Anybody who's listening,
yes,
the recommendation is 66433.
Almost.
Ready?
To 64433.
Okay,
Text
so please
ready.
remember that.
Yes.
Is there a number they can reach out to the local?
Nope, you just have to text ready to 64433.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah. Well, if you've got 15 minutes, we've got something for you to do. If you've got 15 hours in a month, we've got something for you to do. There's a whole lot of work going on. It's great work in the Memphis community, and if you want to be part of it, we can help plug you in.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you heard, this is really good work that is actually saving lives of so many beings, humans, and especially children under 18, right? And I know that you would not want anybody to get hurt. So be a part of something that is better for the entire community at large, no matter what. So, Mary, thank you so much for being on us.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Yep.
And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being tuned into a show that fosters positivity. You know that we bring all of these shows and promote people who do good things for the benefit of the community, no matter how small, no matter how large, no matter how many people. The idea is to see to it that we promote positivity so that you understand it, and it's not just a matter of having a domino effect, but a ripple effect going in all directions. The idea of bringing leaders like Mary is to see to it that you get motivated, you get inspired to be a part of something really good. And this is an initiative that has already made an impact, is making an impact not only in small areas within the country, but also at the Capitol Hill in each state. So be a part of such wonderful initiatives and work, and help organizations help people survive without getting into hospitals or into cemeteries. So, thank you so much for tuning into our shows. Until next time, have a great time, and know that when you tune into our show next time, you are going to have some more inspirational and motivational messages from some other leader somewhere. Thank you so much, and have a